Thank you all for coming. My name is Erik Haddad. I work at Google out of the San Francisco office, and I'm a Firebase team. Been on the Firebase team for about 6 months now, and at Google for 2.5 years. I'm here today to talk to you about how Firebase and Angular work together in a library called AngularFire2, and talk is AngularFire2 and you. A little bit more about me. I have BS in computer science, MBA in technology management. I used to work at Disney, and now I work at Google. So who here has heard of Firebase? Excellent. Who's using Firebase today? All right. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it for those who haven't heard of it, and then I'm going to talk about AngularFire, the library, and how to use it. I built a special demo today, so if you have a laptop, get that ready so it can be interactive. And walk through the console a little bit and some tips for rapid development, and we'll close, okay? All right, so traditional app development, you'd have to allocate a server, and you'd have to spin it up, do some maintenance on it, set up OAuth, SSL certificates, apply your security patches, configure your loading, load balancing, caching, performance tuning, VM. There's a whole lot of maintenance involved to managing your own servers. Quite tedious, and you look like an innovative crowd. You just want to get to the good stuff. You want to be innovative. You don't want to do the maintenance, and who knows? It could cost you a lot of money if you make a mistake. That's a whole lot of headache you don't want to deal with. So, with Firebase app development, you can pretty much cut out the server and worrying about the maintenance and the cost. So with your app and plugging in about 6 lines of SDK configuration, you'll be up and running with a Firebase server for free. And you can store your data in the real-time database and your assets in storage. So there are 3 basic primitives: the real-time database, authentication, and storage. Now, the database syncs the data in real time, which is great, because Angular has 2-way binding, but when you add Firebase, you have 3-way data binding. So anything that you change locally, it also pushes the server, and everyone else gets it. And whatever they change, you see. Very minimal overhead, and it's kind of magical. And the structure of the database is quite simple. You have the JSON object that you would have on the front end, and you just push it, and it'll get stored. Firebase Auth. Now, this is an underrated feature. So you have many different providers. I think that's my next slide. Yeah. So there are different sign-in methods here: Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and you have anonymous as well. But you also have sign-in with email and password. And if you choose to go the email and password route, there's also templating for a welcome email and tokens. So you don't have to worry about all that. With these sign-in methods, there's one record. So you have one user that could be using different authentication methods. There's one UID for that user across those services. It takes a whole lot of that headache out, and you get a bunch of those properties from those service providers, like email address, display names, your avatar, and some other metadata that you can request. Firebase storage. So might be familiar with just uploading to servers, but there's a little bit more magic behind it. When you start, it makes sure that you're authenticated. There are rules that you can put in place to make sure that certain people don't access other people's data. If you're on a low connection, it'll make sure it goes through and waits and rejoins the connection, and then it'll confirm with a callback that it actually went through. There are many different services available to you. To name some, you have analytics, cloud messaging, sharing, test lab, hosting, and a whole bunch of stuff you can read on the website. But I'm most excited about this. Who heard about this announcement last week? You excited about it? Yeah, okay. So this is Cloud Functions for Firebase. This is the #1 requested feature for the last 2 to 3 years. And we've been working on it about that long and wanted to get it just right. Now, what is it? Cloud Functions for Firebase lets you extend and connect Firebase and cloud products with code. And it does a bunch more. So it's the glue between the services. So in my demo, I'll show how I interact with Google Maps APIs, Cloud Vision APIs. I can also make REST calls. I can add Instagram and other third-party auth methods that aren't natively supported by Firebase. I could do a whole bunch of stuff. So I talked about earlier, you don't need a server to serve and host your code. Now you don't need a server to form your responses and wrap your API calls and protect your keys and a whole bunch of other headache. Now it's all up behind the Firebase, and it's tightly integrated with Google services, and you can use others as well. So a basic example, we have Firebase on our app, in our app rather. We upload an image to storage. Now you could have spun up a server with ImageMagick running and make a REST call to initiate it and then push data around and assets around. May or may not be secure, might have VM issues and memory management. But with Cloud Functions, you're pushing it to storage, and there's a trigger you can configure that once triggered, the Cloud Function will go in, it'll grab the image and resize it and stick it right back into storage for you. Totally secure and tightly integrated. There are other use cases here, Firebase real-time database, Firebase authentication, analytics, cloud storage, cloud PubSub, HTTPS, and more coming soon. Now, AngularFire2. So Angular, we all know and love. There was a very powerful AngularFire v1 that interacted beautifully with AngularJS, and now the latest sits atop Angular v2 and v4 to give you the power of RxJS and observables. So it's observable-based, real-time bindings and synchronizing, just subscribe and handle, do your mappings. Authentication is handled for you. With Angular 2 and Angular 4 routing, you have, Angular version 2 and version 4. In your routing, you have a can activate property, and this works nicely. You can put in auth guards to make sure that your users are not accessing things that they should not. And it's real time, so as soon as they sign out or log out in another service, it reacts. Using all the latest and greatest behind the scenes, it was announced just a couple days ago. It's going to release candidate quite soon. Getting started. Basic stuff here. Installing Firebase and AngularFire2 and Firebase tools. Then from the console, copy paste the API key all the way through messaging sender ID. Just those lines of code and the includes and the import, you're ready to go. And then within your component, inject it right here. Quite simple. And then you're off. Setting that up. You have login, log out, get the authorization, which will give you the provider response as well. And you can create the user, like I said, if you go with the email and password route. The basics of data, you have a single datum and a collection of data. So this is your Firebase list. collection of objects and properties. You can push it, update it, and remove it. And then you have an object. You can set the values, update, and remove them. All right, let's get to the good stuff here. This will be a little awkward here. All right, so I like to say with AngularFire and with Firebase, you can go from 0 to app in 5 to 7 days. You can have your idea on a Monday and launch something by Friday. So that's what I do for each conference talk. And I've created Fireplace, kind of an Instagram, using AngularFire2. And here we go. So first part here is the landing. I'm not signed in. I'm going to click Get Started. And now I have the different providers here. I'm going to authenticate with Google. Choose my Gmail. Now I'm in. We're at a 0 state here. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get started. And, oops, that was not intended. Demo photos. Okay. Oh, that's cool. So what I've just done is I've uploaded a photo that I took this morning, and I'm feeding it to Google Cloud Vision API automatically. So all I've done here is upload an image to cloud storage, and Cloud Vision came back saying it recognized it as an urban area and as a screenshot up there. Now in the background, it's also examining the metadata around it. We'll go with one more in the meantime. Somebody's already liked it. So this is Windmill. Already Cloud Vision APIs come back with Windmill, building tower. And this has just come back, the approximate address, and it recognized that I use the Google Pixel XL. And getting real-time likes, I'm going to like it too. So what does that look like in the background? So this is the database here. It's lighting up. So what I've done is, let me refresh this here. All I did was, this is me here. That's my full image and the images that I've uploaded. So it recognized these. And the function itself is right here. There's my logging. So these are the ones by authenticating, it recognized I was a new user, and it created a people row, and each of the people who have authenticated here. So in a previous conference, I was asked in the Q&A, hey, I want to add more data around my auth object. Can I do that? And I wasn't able to say yes at that time, and now I can. So here we have people object. That's my name, my posts, profile photo, etc. And all the locations coming back that I used. And so yeah, sliding it up, and these are the triggers. So it detects a change in storage. I uploaded a photo. It's checking out the metadata and also hitting the Vision API. So I can also dive in here. Some information around my my user and some interactive. So let's see what else we can upload here. So just the simplicity of uploading one asset and then all the rest of the data is taken care of is quite magical to me. Yeah, so you can kind of formulate some other things that you would want to do with it. Let me sign back in here. And some other cool things on hover here. You can see the confidence score. This says it's 98% sure it's a canal. So you can set some thresholds to make sure the quality of the data is right. Cloud Vision also allows you to blur obscene photos. So thank you for nobody uploading. And so you can do facial detection, blurring, OCR. There are just so many different Vision API features that you can implement. For the location, I took the photo, I peeled off the EXIF metadata, and fed it to Google Maps API, and I got the approximate location, and I can also see the make and model of the camera used and the time that it was taken. So there's so much pictures worth 1,000 words. Well, you can peel off as much data and do with it what you want. And that's just one example of what you can do. What else here? And just want to point out, this is all hosted on fireplace.social. It's a vanity URL. This is all using Firebase hosting. So the same command that you use to deploy your functions and your code goes to hosting, and Firebase supplies you with a certificate to make sure it's all secure, and you don't have to worry about GoDaddy certificates and buying all that stuff. Oh, and one last thing. You can do other visualizations here. So using Angular component, Google Maps, you can plot. I also tried a word cloud, didn't work out so well. But you can visualize using that same EXIF metadata, where on a map things were taken. So kind of get those creative juices going, seeing the live stuff. What I didn't get to, I would have liked to implement the notifications and use some more features. Also storage thumbnails, and you can also upload one asset and apply Instagram filters or funny dog tongue sticking out, whatever you want to do. Those kids are doing these days. Anything and everything you want to do, image manipulation, going a step further with an authentication and getting extra data about a person and bringing it in. Just so many things you can do. I hope this has been beneficial to kind of see what you want to hack on next. Just to show you, I imagine you've written Node.js code. You might wonder what the anatomy of a function is. It's just Node.js. So if you've written Node.js, just copy paste that code in, and you're good to go. So here's all it takes for my 3 functions. My trigger of onCreate, onChanges, and all my requires up there. Bring it in however you'd like. And then the sizing right here. This is the annotation part. Pretty straightforward. Getting some paths there, just setting it up, making sure it's the right type of asset. Sorry if I'm blocking. And then just forming a request that you feed to the API, and then it returns the result. And so I get the result, and once I'm done making sure it exists, I access the database and stick it in the tags, and there we have it. And lastly, with the metadata, use some of the same functions there. Same setup. And then here, using a third-party EXIF image package, just taking that image, shoving it in there, and from it, I get a bunch of the metadata back, the GPS latitude and longitude, making sure I have all the right data. There's my key for Google Maps. Please don't steal it. I convert the coordinates to something that the Google Maps API recognizes, and then I do a reverse geocode. I get a result from that, and then I shove it into the database. Yep, so the location's up there, and then it's doing another operation here where it puts in what camera I used. Pretty simple, right? And here's what the deployment looks like. I just do an ng build, usually prepare my dist, and then I just, it deploys the dist for me, along with all the functions and hosting and total time. Let's say you made a mistake, and you don't have to push out a new version of your iOS app, your Android app, or any of these things. You don't have to cut a new version. Behind the scenes, by taking that logic from the app and pushing it down to the back end, you can easily upload a patch or fix for your function, for your rules. That's another powerful feature here. So I wanted to make sure not just anybody could access the data and overwrite it. So these are pretty complex rules you can set in place to make sure your data is secure. You can go as fine-grained or loose as you'd like. Real-time usage here. All right, so that's the app. Hope you enjoyed it. Pretty much explained here what's going on. All I did was log in, and all I did was upload an image. Cloud Functions was triggered. It hits the Cloud API, Google Maps API, and Firebase database. And if you go to the web address here, Firebase function samples, a whole lot of ideas you can glean from that. Let me go back to present mode. So hopefully that inspires you to go and innovate. And real quick, for rapid prototyping at Google, just want to give a shout out to Angular Material. A lot of the components that you saw in there are accessible and ARIA compliant, so you don't have to worry about tab indexes and screen readers and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So it's accessible, mostly responsive, and very simple to use. And it's maintained by Google team. Form controls, navigation, layout, buttons, indicators, and pop-ups, modals. And how you can get started there, much the same. npm install it, inject it, import it, and you can also set some icons. Defining your theme, quite simple. Don't have to do all the SCSS and CSS work. You just use named themes and set your variations and flex layout. So this is based on Flexbox 2016, which you can love or hate. It can be quite tricky at times. This module within Angular Material, you just drop it in, and you can just say I want row or I want to lay it out by row or center or column rather, and then say your alignments, and it just takes care of it for you, and you can specify responsiveness. Very simple and keeps your CSS clean. So a quick summary, auth, database, hosting, storage, and functions make development easy, secure, and scalable. AngularFire2 sits on top of Angular. It's maintained by Googler, and just like Angular is maintained by Googlers, so you know it won't die on the vine like some of the other products. And using RxJS, which is all the rage, and love for observables. Keeping everything real-time and responsive. Like I said, we want you to focus on innovation, not server maintenance, and some of those headaches. And Firebase allows you to easily monetize, test, and analyze your app, and keep your users happy. And like I said earlier, basic plan is free. Most of what you want to do for hacking or early stage startup would be free, which is awesome. And then it scales with the power and flexibility of Google Cloud, so you don't have to worry about growing pains. So if your startup gets really popular, you don't have to worry about building or buying a new building for a server farm. It just comes naturally. And credits, I want to also say that I used FriendlyPix as my basis here. Let me show you. So FriendlyPix is a sample app put out by Firebase, and it's backward compatible. So I made sure that this jQuery-based app that's been out there for 3 years is backward compatible. Function samples, as I mentioned, auth, and yeah. Thank you very much. That's for the Heineken experience here in Amsterdam, if you were wondering.